You don't realize how vulnerable you are until you hear a grown adult whisper, with absolute certainty, "This place knows my name," and then refuse to ever explain what they meant. Because that moment when curiosity quietly turns into dread is exactly where this story begins, with a truth most people don't want to hear. The scariest haunted places in America aren't famous. They're not on postcards or paranormal TV shows. They were places you've probably driven past, stopped near, or even lived beside without ever knowing that something there was watching you long before you noticed it. And once you understand that, it's impossible to feel truly alone again. I've spent years collecting accounts from across the United States, not from thrill seekers or ghost hunters, but from farmers, police officers, teachers, truck drivers, ordinary people who had one extraordinary experience and never fully recovered from it. And what connects these stories isn't screaming ghosts or violent apparitions, but something far more unsettling: awareness. The feeling that a place itself is paying attention, learning you, memorizing you. And one of the first times I encountered this pattern was in rural Wyoming, near a forgotten railroad siding outside Medicine Bow, where the land stretches so flat and open it feels like the sky could crush you if it got any closer. And locals avoid a particular patch of grass they call the breathing field, a name they'll laugh off if asked, until night falls and the wind dies, and you can hear it, a slow, rhythmic rise and fall from the ground itself, like something massive sleeping just beneath the soil. And in 1997, a railroad inspector named Carl Jensen learned what happens when you stay there too long, because during a routine inspection delayed by a storm, he parked his truck beside the tracks and waited, and at exactly to 17 a.m. He radioed dispatch, sounding confused, saying the ground was counting, that it was whispering numbers beneath his boots, calm numbers, patient numbers, and dispatch laughed at first, thinking he was tired, until Jensen said, "It's skipping when I move," and then went silent. And when they found his truck at sunrise, the engine was still warm. The radio was locked on an open channel, humming softly, and his footprints walked straight into the field and stopped. Not disturbed, not dragged, just ended, as if the ground had decided it was done with him. Stories like that are easy to dismiss until you hear another one, like the drainage tunnel under County Road 12 near Alabama, a concrete passage kids once dared each other to walk through because it amplified every sound in a fun, echoey way, until 3 teenagers vanished there in 2004. And what never made the news was what volunteer searchers reported off record, that the tunnel didn't echo like it should, that when they called out names, the sound came back wrong, delayed just enough to feel intentional. And one man swore the echo answered using his childhood nickname, Aname Ayadanti, spoken aloud in decades. And only later did locals quietly admit the tunnel had been built over the foundation of a burned-down tenant church where, during the Great Depression, revival services ended with people screaming that voices were rising from beneath the floorboards, begging not to be left alone. Further north in Minnesota, there's a farmhouse outside Murdoch that looks like every other rural home white siding. White porch. Nothing remarkable, but every tenant since 1981 has fled within 3 months, all reporting the same experience, despite never meeting. That every night around 3 a.m. they were gently nudged awake, not shaken, not startled, just carefully awakened. And the room would feel crowded without anyone there, like something wanted unconscious for it. And when a university research team set up sleep studies in 2012, their equipment recorded all participants entering REM sleep at the exact same second, before abruptly waking, hearts racing, eyes wide, claiming they felt watched by something that seemed disappointed they were awake too soon. And the study ended quietly, the data sealed, the house empty again. In West Texas, near the ghost town of Lajitas Viejas, a lonely desert road has become infamous among state troopers. For missing time reports, drivers realizing hours have passed without memory. But one trooper, Luis Romero, decided to document it, installing a dash cam and driving the route himself, only to later review footage showing him pulling over, stepping out of his cruiser, and standing perfectly still for nearly 7 minutes, facing the open desert, whispering, "I see you too," before calmly driving away. And when questioned, Romero insisted nothing unusual happened. Yet he resigned 2 weeks later and refuses to drive at night. In Maine's deep woods, near the abandoned mill town of Bristol, a collapsed fire tower stands where the forest grows unnaturally silent, And in 1989, a forestry intern named Megan Pollard climbed it during a survey and radioed down that she could see lights moving between the trees in deliberate patterns. Like responses. Laughing as she said, "They're answering me," before her transmission dissolved into static punctuated by rhythmic tapping that experts couldn't identify, and her body was never found. Only her radio still broadcasting, as if waiting for someone to answer back. Then there's an apartment building in Garriott, Indiana, where residents on the third floor hear pacing at night even when the floor is empty. And a maintenance worker once followed the sound recording audio, capturing not footsteps, but controlled breathing. Slow and practiced, as if something was rehearsing how to move like a person. And he moved out the next day without explanation. Maybe the most disturbing is a children's playground in rural Oregon, near Foster, built with bright colors and cheerful equipment, over what was once a temporary morgue site after a fatal school bus accident in the 1980s. And parents noticed their kids staring at empty swings, asking about the other children, describing outdated clothing and quiet games. And one mother recorded her daughter whispering, "They're still waiting," before refusing to ever return. Across all these places, the pattern remains the same: not violence, not chaos, but observation, patience, something staying behind and learning us, studying how long we linger, when we sleep, how we react when we think we're alone. And that's what makes these stories so deeply unsettling. Because if they're true, then haunting isn't about the past refusing to die. It's about something present refusing to leave. Something that doesn't need to scare you right away because it has time. And the real horror is realizing how many places like this exist. Unmarked, unnamed, quietly occupied. Places that don't want attention, don't want investigators or legends. Because as long as they stay forgotten, they can keep watching unnoticed, listening to footsteps, memorizing voices, counting breaths, and waiting for the moment you finally sense that you're not alone and look back. So if this story made you uneasy, if it felt a little too real, do me a favor, like this video. Comment below if you've ever experienced a place that felt aware of you, and subscribe to the channel. Because there are many more stories like this, and the more we talk about them, the harder it becomes for whatever's waiting out there to stay hidden.